Today on TradeTech TV, we are indeed at the TradeTech High Frequency event, and I am joined for once on the other side of the chair by Larry TABB, founder of TABB Group, and I'm sure many of you know his face from TABB Forum, where usually you'd expect him to be doing the interviewing, but for once we're turning the tables and asking a few questions on him. You've just come off of a panel session. One of the main questions was obviously it's all about high frequency trading, and specifically the relationship in this case that might be being broken down as a result of working entirely electronically. Do you think this is actually the case?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think that over the past 10 years, most buy-side firms are used to calling somebody up, telling them what they want to do, having a discussion with that sales trader on the other side of the phone, and then getting something done, and then being able, if he was disappointed with that execution, to then have a very heated, nasty conversation with the person who didn't give them that proper fill. I think what's happened today is that as the proliferation of DMA and algorithmic tools and electronic trading capabilities come up, and the reduced amount of capital that broker provides to the market, that conversation is much more difficult because the sales trader isn't providing as much capital. They aren't matching those orders by hand with other large blocks. They're basically breaking that order into smaller pieces and executing it seamlessly off of a number of different venues. So they're not actually sure who they're trading with. And to a certain extent, if they're not happy with that execution, the only person they can really blame is themselves, and that becomes a much more difficult conversation, blaming yourself.
Perhaps more difficult, but is it maybe slightly fairer then? It's more honest.
Certainly it's more honest, from an outside perspective. That said, the buy-side trader doesn't necessarily have the unique insights within specific names that the sales trader may have, or that the broker would have, that because he's trading a set of names all day long. Now that said, I'm not sure the sell side is staffed that way anymore either. So I think that it's not, you can't just blame the brokers.
Is it just the changing nature of the conversation as well?
I think it's the changing nature of the conversation. It's about commissions. It's about greater measuring of TCA. So to take a look very structurally, what's the impact my trade has? How many basis points did it actually cost? This whole in some cases over analysis of data that kind of pushes these guys to say, well, let me cut my commission in a quarter by using an algorithm, but that then again takes away that relationship and forces you into this anonymous environment that may be much more difficult to actually get a good feel that here's the market.
I actually can't help think this also kind of strikes of a lot of other conversations that people have now about social media as well. And people are saying, well, it's great that everyone's connected in this high-speed fashion, but actually it's breaking down personal one-to-one relationships. And like kind of what I was saying before, is it necessarily that it's breaking them down, or is it just that the ways in which people are interacting, the ways that people are interacting with the markets now is changing, that it's no longer about specific, and maybe for good or bad, that rather than specific interest in any one company, it's simply looking at what's going to make me money, what's the method I should use to make that, rather than, well, should I invest in this guy or this guy? It's just, let's try this routine and this algorithm and see if it works.
Yeah, I think you're right. You can't necessarily say it's good or bad. It's just kind of what is, and the people, the mechanisms that were there to trade 10 years ago are not what's there today. And if you wanted to trade that way today, it would be much more harder because you wouldn't be able to have that capital commitment there, or you'd have to pay more for it. And the liquidity within the market, the blocks just aren't there as much as they are today. They're mostly broken down into little tiny pieces. So you can love it, you can hate it. It's kind of what it is until the regulators, rearrange the chessboard.
Now, there's been talk with some of the regulations of perhaps even bringing in speed limits, and to me this seems like a deliberately negative and anti-forward-thinking way about the markets, and I'm wondering if that's really a good idea at all, a quite dangerous one, in fact.
Yeah, there are issues with trying to turn back the clock. And I think the problems with trying to turn back the clock is that you can't undo the technology. So, a market that is slow may be good for a time when you're picking up the phone and talking to people, but now all of a sudden you slow the market down, and your computers are still working in microseconds and milliseconds and nanoseconds. The question is, what will the impact of that be? Will it chase too many people away from the market? Will it actually bring more capital in? If it brings more capital in, will people with high-speed machines be able to take advantage of these larger blocks? I'm not necessarily sure we understand the answers to those, that all of a sudden you create half-second time and force rules, or you widen spreads, or you create artificial ways of making slowing down the market. I'm not quite sure exactly what's going to happen.
This also seems to me like it's a real changing nature of what is a trader. Particularly as with all these regulations, we're seeing not just fragmentation, but real multi-asset trading, and it's now no longer this specialty, and you've no longer got these, what's the name I'm looking for, the Wall Street style big name trader.
The trader is an endangered species. I think that you look at financial regulation, you look at MiFID II. All of these things are trying to push more and more products into a bid-offer style transparent marketplace. When you have a bid-offer style transparent marketplace, you're going to analyze data and you're going to start making decisions. When you analyze data and start making decisions, who does that better, a human or a machine? A machine can do it way faster than you can. You can break these decisions down into much smaller time increments, and machine doesn't ask for a bonus at the end of the year. Doesn't take a cut of your profits. So eventually we're going to wind up in this environment where basically humans are going to make some longer term decisions. Do I want to own Vodafone? Do I want to own IBM? Do I want to own Alcatel, whatever? And what's my time period that I want to hold this thing? But the implementation decision, the actual trading, I think is increasingly going to be done by machines. It's just going to wind up being more efficient and cheaper, and it's going to be across asset class, it's going to be across borders, it's going to be global, and the machines, they're just cheaper and can analyze more data than we can, like it or not.
Ultimately, there's no room for philosophy in financial markets.
I don't think so.
And on that maybe slightly negative note, but ultimately, hopefully a more positive one.
Well, it's positive if you're a technology developer.
Precisely. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. It's genuinely been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to catching up with you later in the show.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks, Dan.